It's Friday the 24th of April. From the Channel M newsroom, this is the Lunchtime News and these are today's headlines. Calls for faster and more frequent trains to get the economy back on track.
And the big question that we keep on asking is, why has this not been dealt with? This should have been dealt with 100 years ago. We think that the economic benefits are substantial. We've quantified them at 16 billion, so we actually think this is the best railway project in the UK.
Also coming up, the man found dead days after emailing a government department to say he was planning to kill himself. And we speak to the family who've literally got the hump.
But it's not fair on me and him because you're constantly arguing. Because you are both tired.
Good afternoon, more on those stories in a moment, but first we start with some breaking news on a story we've been following here on Channel M News for several months. It's been confirmed a sixth death is being linked to possible radiation at Manchester University. The Rutherford building was used for research by the Nobel Prize-winning scientist Ernest Rutherford 100 years ago. University bosses started an investigation last autumn into a series of rooms used for his experiments after 5 people died in circumstances that could be linked to radiation exposure. The latest death being linked is that of Professor Tom Whiston, who lost his fight against pancreatic cancer earlier this month, aged 70. He worked in the same room as 2 of the other 5 cancer victims. He's thought to have left Manchester in the 1980s and has been living in Brighton. We'll have more on this in our early evening news at 5 o'clock. A report says upgrading trains in and out of Manchester could add an extra £16 billion to the North's economy. A leading think tank has come up with a list of improvements. Ben Bland has been taking a look.
It may feel as though the economy is going off the rails, but if the report by the Northern Way is correct, investment in Manchester's trains and railways could be the key to getting it back on track. The overall aim would be to make train journeys between northern cities quicker and more frequent. Key points of the report include more trains to cope with a predicted 39% increase in passenger numbers by 2020. Better train links between Manchester and major cities such as Leeds, Sheffield and Liverpool. And specifically, cutting the journey time between Manchester and Liverpool from 47 minutes to 30. The report was being launched in Manchester this morning. One of those behind it explained why the plan is so crucial.
We think this is the best railway project in the UK, showing the best returns. Should have happened a century ago. And it's dealing with chronic congestion on the rail network around Manchester. If you picture a motorway and think of 14 lanes in a motorway and suddenly it converges to 2 lanes, just think of the congestion that would cause. That's what we've got here around the Manchester railway hub.
But it's not quite full steam ahead just yet. The report will have to be considered by Network Rail to look at how much the proposed improvements would cost. Ben Bland, Channel M News.
Well, sticking with this story, I'm joined now by Richard Critchley from the Greater Manchester Chamber of Commerce. Richard, good afternoon. It's not immediately obvious how upgrading our trains could have such a big impact on business. What is the connection there?
So you have to recognise Manchester is a crucial hub for train service across the whole of the north of England. We're not just talking about Greater Manchester here, we're talking about a much greater area. But these lines are working at capacity and it is holding up new service from places like Liverpool, Leeds, Sheffield, Newcastle. And it's not just commuter service, there's also freight service as well, so you've got to take that into account. Now what they're saying is that if you free up the capacity, you could get more trains, more services, and improved connectivity could be worth up to £16 billion for the economy as a whole.
So the actual improvements that they're talking about there, more trains, better trains, how would that actually help businesses around here?
Well, what they're talking about, if they can do it, so they can free up the capacity, they could cut journey times by up to 1/3 on most of the key intercity routes. And this is like a 1/3 cut from journey times places like Liverpool, 1/3 cut from Leeds, Sheffield. That'd have a huge impact for businesses, not only in time savings, but in terms of cost, how far they can travel, and there's improved markets as well. And also make Greater Manchester a much more attractive place for businesses from London and the continent to come to, because they can see how far you can actually get to in that shorter journey time.
This report that's been prepared, it's now going to go to Network Rail. It'll be for them to decide what happens now. As somebody who represents businesses, what would you like to urge them to do?
It is absolutely vital Network Rail sort of look into this at the earliest opportunity and start planning and make some reasonable suggestions how this can be achieved. But the important thing is that government commits to funding. Network Rail relies on the government for their funding, and the government has to come forward and commit long-term funding to this strategy. The strategy clearly shows what could be achieved with extra funding. Now the government has to step in.
OK, Richard Critchley from the Chamber of Commerce, thank you very much for joining us this lunchtime. New figures show the country's economy has shrunk more than was predicted. We've now had the third successive quarter of negative growth. Between January and March, output contracted by 1.9%. It follows previous falls of 0.5% and 1.6%. It represents the biggest decline since the third quarter of 1979. The latest figures from the car industry are also out. They show a sharp fall in the number of vehicles being made, down more than 51% in March compared to the previous month. Comparing the first 3 months of this year to last year, there's been a fall of more than 56%. Production of commercial vehicles has dropped even further. That's down by 63% between January and March. There has been some good news, though. Estate agents have reported their best month for house sales in the last year. Each sold an average of 8 homes in March, and figures also show the number of people looking to move house is on the up. A housing campaigner who lost his courtroom battle with a government department over a rent rise has been found dead just days after getting a £3,000 legal bill. Kevin Duffy takes up the story.
By the time you receive this, I will be dead, having committed suicide. Before you send another poor old person a bill for £3,000, think of the consequences. That was the email sent by 57-year-old Neil Hill to lawyers in the government's Treasury Department after his failed bid to halt a £4.70 a week rent rise for tenants of City West Housing Trust in Salford failed. Mr. Hill emailed his suicide note to a government department on April the 18th. That was last Saturday. But we understand that it wasn't until the following Tuesday, the 21st of April, that the contents of his email were passed on to Greater Manchester Police. Once they received that information, police came round to Mr. Hill's home here in Astley Road in Earlham and forced their way into his home, as you can see from the damaged door behind me. Once inside, they found Mr. Hill's body hanging and confirmed that he had indeed died. Police say there are no suspicious circumstances surrounding the death. Mr. Hill brought the action against Salford MP and Communities Minister Hazel Blears because she consented to the housing stock transfer from Salford Council to the so-called Arm's Length Management Organisation, or ALMO, by the name of City West. However, a government barrister persuaded Salford County Court that the MP's name should be removed from the case because Miss Blears did not have a contractual relationship with Mr. Hill relating to the rent. The case was struck out in court. Mr. Hill's brother, Terry, said he was appalled at what had happened and that his brother was of sound mind. City West Housing said they were sad to hear of Mr. Hill's death. A coroner's inquest will take place in due course. Kevin Duffy for Channel M News.
A tow truck that's used to raise money for charity has been stolen from outside a garage in Radcliffe. The vehicle had been taken to Pendlebury Commercials for its MOT on Saturday. It's normally used by a business which raises funds to help people with a rare blood disorder that can be fatal. The fire service has put out more details about a major fire that destroyed much of a mill building in Oldham earlier this week. The Maple Mill in Hathershaw caught fire on Tuesday evening. We now know more than 100 calls were made to 999 about the blaze. The first fire engine was on the scene within 3 minutes. It reported more than 20 gas cylinders being involved, some exploding, and people still inside the building. Within 2 minutes, another 10 engines and 50 more firefighters were called in. At its height, in total, 23 appliances were at the scene, with 100 crew members from across the region. Investigations are now looking at why the fire developed so rapidly and what standard of fire protection was in place at the building. Police say they're now treating the case of a missing university chef in York as suspected murder. Claudia Lawrence hasn't been seen for more than a month. A £10,000 reward's been put up for help in finding out what happened to her. It looks like plans for 3 so-called Titan prisons are to be abandoned. Each would hold 2,500 inmates. One of them was due to be put in Warrington. We understand the Justice Secretary Jack Straw will tell MPs next week he's abandoning the idea because of a lack of funds. 5 smaller jails may be built instead. The RSPCA is stepping in over concerns the recession is leaving pet owners unable to afford proper healthcare for their animals. The charity is starting a series of free clinics for those who can't afford vet's bills.
I've come to get him microchipped and just basically checked over. A friend of mine got her dog chipped and it cost her like £40. It definitely cost me a lot of money to go to the vets, and being free is one of the main reasons why I've come down here today.
Since 2007 we've been bringing pet healthcare services to the community, particularly to areas where there aren't any veterinary practices or there may be less access financially to access pet services.
I've been here today to see my dog about defleeing him, get him wormed and just basically check him over, and it costs £15 at the vet normal vets to get him fleed, but I've only just recently got him, so that was soon to come.
We've had a really good response today, and I think what's been really interesting about today is the variety of pets. Normally we see just majority dogs, but today we've seen plenty of exotic pets as well, including snakes and lizards, and even rabbits, because they're classed as exotic pets as well.
Let's take a look ahead now to the weekend sporting action with the preview. Here's Ian Irving.
Thanks, James. Well, first today, Liverpool manager Rafa Benitez is preparing a cheeky bid for Manchester United striker Carlos Tevez when his loan finishes at the end of the season. The Argentinian hinted for the first time this week he may leave Old Trafford, and it seems Benitez is keen to take him to Anfield, which will no doubt annoy United boss Sir Alex Ferguson. Wes Brown could be set for his first start since October against Tottenham tomorrow. Brown played 45 minutes of the reserves 1-1 draw with Newcastle last night and maybe rushed back from his foot problem to cover for the injured Gary Neville and John O'Shea. Rio Ferdinand will also return after his midweek rest, and we'll be hearing Sir Alex's thoughts on the Spurs clash at 5. Manchester City midfielder Vincent Kompany has warned any summer arrivals they must be prepared for a fight. He says he wants any incoming stars to not just have talent but a strong personality and mind. The Blues face Everton this weekend. Alano and Sean Wright-Phillips face late fitness tests, and again we'll be hearing from manager Mark Hughes at 5. Bolton Wanderers have Ricardo Gardner and Danny Shitu back for tomorrow's game with Aston Villa, and manager Gary Megson says his side are still not sure of survival.
At the end of the season, we might turn around and say, 37 was more than enough. I have doubts about that, because if we look back at this football club 12 months ago, we just lost 4-0 away to Aston Villa. Everybody had us relegated, and we were way adrift, and we won 3 and drew 2 out of the last 5 games, and we had 3 away from home as well. So it can be done. And we've got to try and make sure that if somebody does come up with that kind of run, that we're on the same run as well.
Ex-Oldham Athletic manager Andy Ritchie is backing current boss Joe Royle to turn things around next season if he takes the job permanently. Royle has not won a game since taking the job 7 games ago.
Yeah, I mean, he's been unlucky in 1 or 2 games. They've just been the wrong side of maybe a 2-1 loss, or excuse me, not being able to just hold out for a win. So I mean, Joe will want his own players in, and that'll happen in the summer if obviously he accepts the job for next season. But yeah, they've not had the best of times, and obviously Lee Hughes had scored quite a few goals. He's gone on loan to Blackpool, so I think probably the shake-up next season we'll see a better Oldham Athletic side.
In League 2, Bury travel to Gillingham tomorrow for a game that they must win if they're to keep their automatic promotion hopes alive.
They're a good side. They've been playing well. Bury, we've not lost any game in the last 10 games, so I think we're going down there with full confidence to make sure we get a victory, because that's the main thing that we need now, 3 points and nothing more. So we're going to go down there and enjoy it.
On to Rugby Union now, and Sale Sharks have confirmed the signing of 2 new players for next season. Samoan hooker Man Rishwalga and Fijian international Marika Vakachegu joined Scottish prop Gavin Kerr, who joined yesterday. In cricket, Lancashire have put back plans to turn the square 90 degrees. The move was originally planned for the end of next season, but will now take place in the winter of 2010 and will definitely be ready for the Ashes in 2013. Well, the Red Rose are in action today in the final day of their county championship clash with Sussex. We'll have updates on that game at 5 p.m. That's all your sport for now. As I've previewed, there'll be more sport at 5 o'clock, but back to James now.
Ian, thank you very much. There's plenty still ahead this lunchtime, including the speed humps keeping one family awake at night and pictures from a very traditional celebration for St George's Day last night.
We're here today specifically because it's St George's Day. We do dance in Manchester City Centre very often, Manchester Morris Men. On St George's Day we felt we just had to be here because we're bringing this ancient English tradition of Morris dancing out to be seen.
Welcome back to Channel M's Lunchtime News. A quick reminder that you can always watch this programme again and also see more of our individual reports online by visiting channelm.co.uk. Lots on there right now, including details of a big rise in burglaries across Greater Manchester, and we meet the wartime sweethearts who've been reunited after 60 years apart. That's at channelm.co.uk. Now, what keeps you awake in an evening? Perhaps it's worrying about debt, or maybe it's the children. Well, in Harper Hay, one household's suffering because of humps that go bump in the night. Nina Warhurst has been to meet the Butcher family.
Graham's lived in his Harper Hay flat for 28 years, but since the council put speed bumps on his street 10 years ago, he says he's not had one good night's sleep.
OK. So this is the speed bump in question. Yeah. Now, it can't be more than 20 metres away from your bedroom window. What does that mean through the night?
The cars are coming over, it's thump, thump, thump. You get a vibration through the house. The noise, you get a banging going through the house.
Oh, we just heard it then.
And that's going slow.
It disturbs everything, even during the day. You know, like if I'm decorating, whatever, it's just, you hear it thumping during the day, and all it's doing, look, it's taking tarmac off.
Graham's tried everything, earplugs, sleeping pills, and has even triple glazed the windows, but he says nothing works and that the noise is affecting his health as well as his relationship with wife Marion, who has mobility problems.
But it's not fair on me and him because you're constantly arguing, because you are both tired. I mean, you can't even sit out there. We've got a beautiful garden and you can't sit in it.
The council did test the ground for vibrations in 2006, but found the levels to be acceptable and have promised to check again, but haven't said when. So, watching Deal or No Deal on mute, it was my turn to feel those bad vibrations. And then it came.
You could hear it going over two bumps then, one here and one a bit further up.
Yeah, well, I've said this, I can hear it from that one, I can hear it from that one.
Well, we've been sitting in the living room for just a couple of minutes, and in that time, we've definitely heard and felt the vibrations from the speed bump. In fact, there went another one. What would you like to say to the council, Graham?
Listen to people. Why should people have to put up with constant bullying?
And what about you, Marion?
You really want to know?
Keep it clean.
Yeah. Yeah, I just want to say, yeah, they should listen to people. As I've said, you stay in at my house for a week and I'll go to yours.
Nina Warhurst, Channel M News.
A Manchester pub had to close yesterday over fears of trouble, with hundreds of people gathered to mark St George's Day. Sinclair's Oyster Bar in the Old Wellington locked its doors at 5:30. More than 200 people were outside celebrating in the sun. Some anti-Irish and anti-Islam chants were heard. Police monitored the situation as people began to move on and no arrests were made. There were plenty of celebrations going on in honour of the patron saint, though. We caught up with the group putting on a very traditional display just near the Arndale Centre.
We're here today specifically because it's St George's Day. We do dance in Manchester City Centre very often, Manchester Morris Men, but on St George's Day we felt we just had to be here because we're bringing this ancient English tradition of Morris dancing out to be seen. A lot of people just don't realise that England has this rich tradition of really colourful dances. The colourful hats are a local tradition which developed during the Industrial Revolution, where on the weeks people would go out, dress up as fancily as they could and process around the town dancing and generally having a good time.
I really like it. We are very happy to be here, experiencing this original and typical dance, and to know more about this culture and this lovely city.
the sticks are to ward off evil spirits or something, clashing them together. The hankies are supposed to distribute fertility, but we don't tell the ladies about that until afterwards.
I thought it was amazing. Yeah, I thought it was really good. It's beautiful. Yeah.
Now, if you're having trouble making ends meet in the recession, spare a thought for some of our celebrities. Apparently they're struggling too. The annual Rich List is out and shows the wealth of some of the country's top music millionaires is down. Sir Elton John's apparently now struggling on with just £175 million. Sir Paul McCartney is down to £440 million, and Robbie Williams has had to wipe £25 million off his fortune as well. It must put them practically on the breadline. Being Friday, let's take a weekly look now at what's coming up on the entertainment front this weekend, and it's a busy one. Neil Sowerby, our entertainment editor, joins us now. Neil, good afternoon. Musically, a big weekend for the girls.
Oh, some of the best female acts around are in town. Girls Aloud tonight. Last album, Treading Water, I think, but live, still awesome. And, of course, Cheryl Cole, national treasure like you. Sunday, Saturday, Pink takes over. Usually very playful, bit in your face. New album, Funhouse, about a breakup of a marriage. Might see more vulnerable Pink there. I'll be going to see PJ Harvey at the Ritz tonight with their old collaborator John Parrish. Terrifying new album, lots of ukulele. Not very nice for men to read the lyrics, I don't think.
So that's the girls sorted out. What about treats for the boys?
Oh, it's got to be Our Own Doves. They lead the fight back for the blokes at the Academy. A Kingdom of Rust, a new album. Difficult fourth album, 3 years in the making, but it's getting them elbow-style acclaim. That's worth checking out if you can get a ticket.
And very briefly, tell us about a good night for the clubbing fans tonight.
Oh, it's got to be Carl Cox. He was born in Oldham, raised down south, lives in Australia, not toured for 10 years. At 47, he can still shake the rafters. Great night.
OK, Neil Sowerby, thank you very much. More details on that and much more if you're looking for something to do on the website, citylife.co.uk. After a fairly bright and warm week, time now to see if there's any sunshine for the weekend with the forecast. Here's Michelle Eagleton.
Well, we did have a lot of hazy sunshine this morning. This afternoon, we are going to have a chance of a few showers. Now, they are going to be brief because by this evening, it should dry up and be a pleasant night. Those top temperatures of 19 will be dropping to 7 overnight, but still quite a mild day all in all. Is it going to stay like that for tomorrow? Well, I can tell you that tomorrow, generally the same picture as today, although some more heavier showers due in the afternoon. Sunday's looking really, really good. Lots of sunshine expected, but do make the most of it because by Monday and Tuesday, that rain's back with a vengeance.
This is Channel M, our top stories. A sixth death is being linked to possible radiation at Manchester University. Professor Tom Whiston, who left Manchester in the 80s, lost his fight against pancreatic cancer earlier this month. He worked in the Rutherford building, which was used for experiments with nuclear material 100 years ago. Faster and more frequent trains in and out of Manchester could be the key to injecting billions of pounds into the economy. A report claims that improving services could create an extra £16 billion of business. And figures just out show the recession has deepened more than was expected. Output fell by 1.9% in the first 3 months of the year, a greater fall than experts had predicted. Those are today's headlines, and that was the Lunchtime News. Much more on all those stories with Andy Crane in our early evening news from 5 o'clock tonight. But from me and the rest of the Lunchtime team, have a very good weekend. Bye-bye for now.